Hey there. A lot of you have been praying to me lately about this election, looking at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton as your nominees and asking, "Oh Lord, why hast thou forsaken us?" And so I wanted to give you an explanation of what's going on with this election cycle and why our major party candidates suck so bad this time around. See, America's been in a rough spot for a while. Worker pay has barely increased since the early 1970s, and families are falling apart under all the pressure. You've been mired in expensive wars near my old hometown, and your environment's becoming so polluted with water so dirty that I couldn't even turn it into wine. And, the leaders that you've got really just aren't up to the task of solving these problems. But you might be wondering why I didn't help one of the other candidates, like my fanboy, Ted Cruz. But let's face it, the only person who's more fake about their Christianity than Ted Cruz is Donald Trump. Or maybe you're wondering why I haven't done more to help Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's a fellow Jew who likes to give people free food and healthcare like I did with my miracles back in the day. Sanders has spent years fighting corruption and greed in Washington, D.C., but the forces he's up against are very powerful and very evil. And for all of Bernie's resolve, he's just not capable of defending himself against the kinds of attacks that the powerful special interests infesting our government would throw at him if he actually had a serious shot at the presidency. Like me, Bernie would end up crucified for trying to change the system. But there is another. Before I reveal to you the Savior who will lead you through these trying times, I'd like to tell you a parable. In the land of Egypt, some years after the Jews fled to the Promised Land, there lived a slave who was tasked with dragging heavy stones to town for his masters to build with. One day, his master felt especially cruel and chained his leg to a large boulder that was too heavy for one person to move alone, and told him to drag it to town himself. The slave tried and tried to pull against the chain, but it was no use. As the day went on, a merchant passed by, and the slave cried out to him for help. But the merchant replied, "Stop complaining and work harder, slave. We need those stones to build higher walls to protect our city from bandits." And he traveled on. Soon a noblewoman came upon the slave as well, and he cried out for help again. But the noblewoman replied, "Don't you complain, slave. We need these stones to build houses for the peasants who serve me. Keep pulling." The noblewoman journeyed on, and shortly after, one of the few Jewish slaves who remained in Egypt ran up the road. The slave cried out to him, but the Jew replied, "I wish I could help, but right now I must run an errand for my lady. She's at war with another noble who would treat us even worse if he took our lands." And the Jew ran down the road after the noblewoman. Finally, a free man came along and saw the slave, who was still trying to move the rock. The free man said, "It's clear you're a hard-working man, but your masters have set you on an impossible task. But for your hard work, I will repay you." And the free man took out a hacksaw and broke through the slave's chains, and said to him, "Come with me, for I know of a place where those who contribute to the survival and well-being of others are kept alive and taken care of by each other, while those who seek to profit from the labor of others without laboring themselves are rebuked." The Savior's name is John McAfee. Many of you are probably wondering, who's John Galt? No, just kidding, only the libertarians are thinking that. But John McAfee is a computer scientist who invented the first commercial antivirus software, which he gave away for free online before he sold the company, and which saved many innocent people from malicious software. He also worked for NASA, helping humanity ascend to the heavens. And while McAfee has at times been a rich man, he does not hoard his wealth as other rich men are known to do. He took the money he made selling McAfee antivirus and moved to Belize, where he studied the medical effects of local plants, learning how to use the power of nature to heal people, and created multiple small businesses to provide service to the local people. But his time in Belize was also trying, and the challenges he faced there are what make him the candidate Americans need to stand up to corrupt special interests. While staying in Belize, a local politician asked McAfee for a sizable donation. McAfee knew the man's reputation as someone who preyed on the people of Belize, so he said no. The politician sent armed government agents to raid his home, shoot his dog, and try to extort the money from him at gunpoint. McAfee still refused to give this evil warlord money, so he escaped, fled the country, and came back to America. John McAfee has stood up to more armed thugs working for corrupt special interests than every other candidate for every party combined. America needs a candidate who can stand up to the Federal Reserve, which has enabled bankers to steal trillions of dollars from our economy without producing a single thing of value. When McAfee returned to America, he met the woman who is now his wife. At the time, she was a sex worker with an abusive pimp who kept her in sexual slavery, but McAfee stood up to the man, rescued her from her fate, and offered her a better life. I used to hang out with prostitutes back in the day, and many of them are good people who provide a useful service to their community, and they deserve a better life than a life of slavery and abuse. And what's more Christian and American than freeing a slave girl from bondage and making her your equal? While McAfee has become a rich man, he still lives his life as a working man would, among the people, understanding that people who contribute to society at all levels, from the lowest streetwalker to the highest CEO, has value because they contribute to society, while those who make a living through force, fraud, and theft are a threat to good people everywhere. John McAfee would dismantle the prison industrial complex, eliminating victimless crime laws. Because laws like gun control, marijuana prohibition, and anti-prostitution laws don't have a victim, nobody is going to the police to ask them for help. These laws are only enforced when the police feel like it, meaning they're easy to abuse and they're often used to oppress the less fortunate, ruining hundreds of thousands of innocent lives every year. John McAfee knows this because his own wife couldn't turn to the police for help when she was forced into sex work, and he had to rescue her when our police failed to. John McAfee would break up the banking cartel that's bleeding America dry. He understands that big banks have stolen trillions of dollars from the Federal Reserve, enriching themselves without producing anything of value. As our financial sector has grown more and more bloated, wages have stagnated for much of the rest of the economy. Despite the fact that workers today are better educated and work longer hours than ever before, the profits of their labor are all going to the rich, who use the Federal Reserve to essentially print themselves free money without having to work for it. Even John McAfee couldn't 3D print a needle big enough to fit their bloated camels through. And unlike the bankers, McAfee's a successful businessman who made his money by being innovative and creating a product that people were willing to pay him for, even though he gave his product away for free. Best of all, his economic policies don't rely on miracles, just common sense. He has the best understanding of the meaning behind parables like the Good Samaritan and the parable of the talents, understanding that a person has value because they contribute to the lives of others, not because they have some fancy title or make a good first impression. He's the candidate best suited to reform our economy for the good of hard-working fishermen, carpenters, and computer programmers. And unlike some business people, McAfee's policies would be good for the environment. He understands what drives technology forward and would create a market that rewards innovation. John would eliminate oil subsidies and corporate welfare that goes to factory farms, making it easier for renewable and sustainable industries to compete. He knows that the military-industrial complex is one of the highest polluting industries in America, and would cut unnecessary military spending. Only John McAfee has the knowledge and skills necessary to fend off war, famine, and pestilence and save our species from death. And last but certainly not least, John McAfee is the best candidate to lead America into the information age. Donald Trump's never sent a single email, and Hillary Clinton can't keep track of her emails, whereas John McAfee understands computers better than the average voter, and is the best candidate to sort out complicated issues like net neutrality, cybersecurity, and privacy issues in this modern age. Listen to the gospel of John McAfee, for he will make you the programmers of a new and improved world. The establishment won't let Bernie's peaceful revolution get off the ground, so it's time we get the libertarians to chase those money changers out of our state houses with whips. It's time to install McAfee and get the virus of force and the malware of corruption out of our system. John McAfee for president, everybody.